If you have a dose of a freaky ghost, who you gonna call? This time, maybe Sam and Dean. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is the fifth Ghostbusters movie and the fourth in this timeline. Having stopped Gozer again 2 years prior, the family of Egon Spengler have moved into the old Ghostbusters headquarters in New York City and restarted the business. When an ancient ice god called Garaka is let loose from an old early 1900s ghost trap, the new Ghostbusters have to team up with the old to switch on their proton packs and save the world. Sound simple enough? Just wait. Now, I liked Ghostbusters Afterlife from just over 2 years ago. I thought it was a good new start for the series that doubled as a wonderful tribute to Harold Ramis. However, I don't have as many positive feelings toward Frozen Empire. What else can I say, but this movie left me kind of cold. It's only an improvement over the previous film in the area where I suspected it would be, and that is that it has more imagination on display. My biggest beef with Afterlife was simply that it was a retread of the Gozer plot from the first movie, so it was refreshing to see that this follow-up expands a bit on the Ghostbusters lore, and has an original villain, a decently intimidating one at that. And behind it is a new director in Gil Kenan, who is a good choice. He was the director of Monster House, and we can see in that movie, as well as this one, that he can create an atmosphere that's both silly and scary at once, which is the perfect tone for Ghostbusters. I'll also give a little credit that this is not a sequel that relies purely on member berries. However, it does get sidetracked with member berries. There's a whole side quest thing going on with Finn Wolfhard's character Trevor trying to catch Slimer who's lurking about in the attic. This doesn't relate to anything plot-wise. Oh, and there's also a 3-second bit with Ray Stantz getting scared by the library demon from the first movie. It's like the Ark of the Covenant in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It appears literally just because it can. And you know in Afterlife, when the kids get arrested, Phoebe asks for a phone call, and the officer goes, "Who are you gonna call?" before she calls a former Ghostbuster? I could dig that. In this movie, though, a simple use of the series' catchphrase apparently doesn't suffice. Gary Grubersman has an entire monologue that's just reciting lyric after lyric of the theme song. It has the opposite effect as Nicolas Cage rambling through the alphabet in Vampire's Kiss, whereas there it's funny because we keep thinking he's going to stop, but he just goes on and on. Grubersman reciting the theme song is irritating because we keep thinking he's going to stop, but he just goes on and on. But what really keeps this from being a truly enjoyable Ghostbusters adventure is that it's bloated with so many characters, and it can't juggle them all in a runtime less than 2 hours. We've got the younger cast joining the old for a greater amount of time than the previous movie, plus a couple of new supporting characters jammed in. And with about the only exception of Annie Potts, who you could easily forget was in it at all, this movie scrambles to give all of them something of importance to do, and it just results in a very confused structure. The only character dynamic that's given any substantial time to flourish is the friendship between Phoebe and this ghost character named Melody, a 16-year-old who died in a fire. This at least gives the story and Phoebe's character some coherent progression. But in terms of any of the younger cast, that's all there is on the positive side. Finn Wolfhard and Celeste O'Connor scenes in Afterlife I felt slowed that movie to a crawl, and the two of them are just as forgettable and listless here. If you're in it for the OG cast, the only one who has a major role this time around is Dan Aykroyd as Ray. Ernie Hudson as Winston gets an adequate amount of screen time, I suppose, and Bill Murray as Peter Venkman, he just pops up twice without much rhyme or reason. It's a shame because despite Venkman not having much screen presence since 1989, Bill Murray gets right back into full mind meld with this character as if he had never left. It really makes me wish that we did get to see more of him, but then again, it's hard to see how because this movie is already so overcrowded with characters that it's like a 2-hour game of sardines. I can't see this movie being for any diehard Ghostbusters fan what Jurassic World Dominion was for me, but Frozen Empire does make one of that movie's mistakes, and that is a lack of time allotted for meaningful interactions between the old and new characters. You'd think there'd be opportunity for this because the two primary characters, when you get down to it, and believe me, it's hard to get down to it with this movie, are Phoebe and Ray. So there would be plentiful potential here for Ray to be kind of a mentor figure to Phoebe in this time when she feels heavily underappreciated. She is the granddaughter of one of his best friends, after all. And getting heart-to-heart with McKenna Grace as she's in character, I feel could have given Dan Aykroyd the chance to really shine as an actor, because Aykroyd is on the spectrum, and the character of Phoebe is widely perceived to be on the spectrum. Now, at one point, it seems as though they're about to have something of a meaningful conversation when she asks him if he's ever thought about the afterlife, and then just when you think so, they get interrupted. Why the movie would do that, I really don't know. Come on, it's 3 generations of Ghostbusters all together. I would like to get the sense that they're all one big family. Couldn't we have at least gotten a hangout scene for all these characters, a la everyone trying to lift Mjolnir in Age of Ultron? Now, the character whose very presence in this movie makes the least amount of sense is actually Podcast. I like him enough, but really, what is Podcast doing here? I mean, I know he helped bust ghosts in the last movie too, but he's around Phoebe's age, about 15. Does he have parents at all? Not that this was very well explained in Afterlife either. I guess we were supposed to just assume that his family was at home worried about him through the entire movie. But here, seriously, where are his parents and how is he in New York? All this time, has he just been a homeless kid who willfully goes to school and has a podcast studio set up in an alleyway? I also gotta mention, he looks so different here that I started to wonder if it was the same actor, until I realized, oh yeah, Afterlife kept getting delayed because of the pandemic. So Logan Kim has changed so much that it's obvious the last movie was filmed almost 5 years ago, even though 2 years have gone by in universe. Out of the brand new cast that's crammed into this movie, there is one standout. Kumail Nanjiani as this guy who has a hold of the artifact containing Garaka. Nanjiani was also pretty fun in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and here he actually has most of the best laughs. In fact, one of Bill Murray's 2 scenes is one shared with him, and it amounts to a pretty funny moment in just how awkward and macabre it is. Another scene that had me cracking up involves this ghost that's almost like just a little red speck of dust, and it has the ability to possess any single piece of matter. It's a sequence where a few of the characters chase after this thing while it's possessed a trash bag. It's very good visual humor that has the vibe of classic Ghostbusters. Longtime fans may also like to know that Walter Peck hasn't changed a bit. His inclusion in this movie is one of the more natural, and he's still that jerk who wants to shut down the Ghostbusters for good, and we all hate him for it. All the while, in the grand scheme of things, he's really not wrong about anything he says. What might be the biggest laugh, however, is when Patton Oswalt shows up. He appears briefly as a librarian who gives an exposition dump on the ancient history of Garaka. It's not anything he says or does that's funny, it's the mere fact that he's in a film in this Ghostbusters timeline, with the knowledge that he partook in the online brawling over the 2016 reboot taking the defense. Another thing that feels like the result of just how compressed this movie is its inability to fulfill some of the ideas it presents. As featured in the trailer, Ray goes into gruesome detail about Garaka's power, referred to as the Death Chill, literally scaring people to death. You'd think that this would be a pivotal moment of reckoning for everyone involved, that they'd have to prepare to face Garaka and overcome any internal fears, but in fact, it does nothing with that idea. Sure, Garaka does ice up a lot of people. He provides a multitude of opportunities to shout, "I was frozen today!" But that detailed description of how his powers work could have just as easily been simplified to, he freezes you, and nothing in the movie would change. Even the climactic battle isn't fulfilling of its potential. The entire island of Manhattan has been engulfed in ice. It's the day after tomorrow out there, and Garaka is unleashing swarms of ghosts onto the city. This has every reason to be the biggest and most spectacular climax in the whole series, and yet the whole final battle is just confined to the firehouse. How underwhelming can you get? While Afterlife, for all its flaws, felt like a movie that the people behind it wanted to make, Frozen Empire is more of just a safe and marketable sequel that was obligatory after the franchise found new footing. It's better than the 2016 reboot. I'd even say it's still slightly better than Ghostbusters 2, which personally I've never cared for at all. It's intermittently entertaining with a few solid laughs and pretty good special effects, but it suffers from serious issues in pacing and structure, and the story is just too cluttered to be consistently fun. I hear word that there are tons of deleted scenes, so maybe there'll be a director's cut that includes them. And unlike Jurassic World Dominion, which I still maintain was never going to be improved by the extended cut, there's really no way that movie could have worked without a full-on rewrite, I do see Frozen Empire potentially being improved by more flowing editing and additional scenes to certain characters. But for right now, in terms of what we're given in theaters, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, on the Factor Facts, gets a 49%. That's a wrap. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. Like and share, subscribe for more. This is Pop Culture. I'm Alex Pop.